if there's something topical that would not make sense later, but feel free to message, put something in there, and I'll try to get Richard or Barb to answer. Nadine's from Central Alberta.
Perfect.
Kelowna, Vancouver, lots of people with the Syrah, good choice.
And if for those of you who I haven't met before, I'm Good Wine Gal Barb Wild. I live and work in the province, all over the place. I do love wine. That started my adventure at least a decade ago. COVID inspired me to try to find a way to bring us together without having to travel because we wouldn't. And so this is the outcome of that. I'm a wine writer. You can find stories that I write in Vitis magazine. There's a new one out yesterday. So please read, please share. I have a blog on my website. It's loaded with information. And if there's anything in particular you're looking for, you can always message me directly. Like Da Silva and like Cassandra, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. Please follow us, please like us. And please let us know, what you're doing, what you're looking for, and how we can be of service, because that's really why we're here. We're here to help you on your wine journey with your wine life. And I love mine, so I think you all love yours, and just want it to be a bigger and more interesting part of your life too. So we can help you in, if there's any way we can help you, certainly showing up at Da Silva Winery on the Naramata Bench and hanging out with Richard would be one of the ways to change your life. So we're so lucky to have Richard. He's lost all his hair, but we're so lucky to have Richard and Twylla here today to share the story with us about the beginnings, the middle, and now, where we are with the winery, with the wine styles, with Naramata Bench, and a life of a winemaker and a proprietor. So it's going to be super interesting. But fasten your seatbelts, because it's gonna be a wild ride, and I'm Barb Wild, so I can attest to that. Yeah. Anyway, let us just get started. I'm going to share the screen now. If you want to turn your video off, your camera off, you are welcome to do that. You will still be able to see everything. So, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Can you see it?
Fantastic.
All right.
So first off, I want to interject here. I want to say big shout out to all of our amazing wine club members. I've seen a bunch of you on there. My wife and I, and everybody knows Twylla. She's the wine club manager. She is your go-to. She keeps me in line, which is fantastic. Otherwise, it'd be a bit of a gong show here. So I want a big shout out to all of you. You are pivotal and really important for us and our staff, and we love you all. Thank you for supporting us. It's meaningful to us, and we look forward to seeing you here. And just want to say a big shout out. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Richard. I think I was telling Richard and Twylla, of all the events that I've done, there was over 40 interested attendees to this event. I've never seen a number that high. Normally on Facebook, it's 10. So it just kind of speaks to how much people sort of love you guys. So really great. So Richard, here we are. You can see our first slide. Can everybody see the slides? Yes, excellent. So here we are on a lazy Wednesday afternoon, all on Zoom, but with our glasses of wine, arriving at Da Silva Vineyards Winery on the Naramata Bench. So maybe this is a good chance, Richard, for you to just tell the story from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting story. How long we've been in the bench? Well, it goes back quite a ways. Our family first actually moved from Portugal to the Naramata Bench in '55. But I was born and raised in Oliver. I came back to Naramata Bench to start the winery and open the door. We started the project in 2010. But our history in the Naramata goes back a very long time, and it was a bit of an homage to how important the Naramata Bench was for myself and my family, and getting back to those roots. And we started this location in 2010. So that's when the building started. Now, obviously, this beautiful sign, all of this has been kind of slowly built as we sell a bottle of wine to this person, that person. We add things to the winery. But yeah, we're super lucky to be back here. The property that we're in right now, it was owned by a very close Portuguese friend of our family. We grew up together in the Azores and the islands together. And so this property itself has history to our family as well. So it has a lineage that we're glad to continue on today.
And Richard, that crest that you have there, is the crest, is there a story behind that, or there's a question here.
This one here, the crest on the
lion.
Yeah, so the crest you see here is it's a stylized, simplified version, just because our graphics and the sign people just couldn't print the actual intricate family crest. So this is actually our family crest, the Silva family. My brother has that tattooed on his calves, and it personally means a lot to us. We will have the original, like what it looks like, the artwork for it. It's very colorful and quite intricate, the actual family crest, in the wine shop this summer. But yes, that is our family's standard.
So I just want to reiterate what you said, but your family heritage was the Azores 1700s, came to the Okanagan 1955 to farm fruit in the Okanagan Valley. That's just context, yes?
Yeah, so like the family moved here in the 1950s as part of a federal government program to bring in workers in. Canada was growing, and they needed these people to come in and help with the farms. But the family, it gets lost in antiquity in our family. I think my mom and my aunt has lost the story in the mid 1700s, but our lineage in both farming, grape growing, and making wine and agriculture dates back at least that far. We just can't. I have to spend a lot of time in the churches there to find the rest of that family history.
Yeah.
That who has it all over there. So
yeah.
It's
well, it's like so many families in Canada that have come from somewhere else, and the history was really through the church because that was the force at the time, and most of it's lost. So, but it's still something we can tell stories about. So the antiquity you were speaking of, I'm kind of noticing this tractor here. So first off, it's a great picture. I love the mood of this one, but I also did say yesterday, behind every great man is a great woman. So I love this picture, but the question I asked yesterday was, are you really driving this tractor? And you were like,
almost every day. Those of you who've been to the winery have seen this here. This tractor has again, like with everything at this winery, has a connection to our family. The 1630 that you see here, John Deere, was actually owned by the late Manuel Borba, whose property is adjacent to this property. Those of you from Penticton know the Borba family very well. Manny Borba is the head of the soccer thing here in Penticton. His dad, when he passed away, his widow approached me and asked me if I would like to purchase the tractor from their farm, and they had it's got a long history, but to this day is used almost every day still. I have a brand new tractor that I do have that's really fancy, but this one never breaks down, and it costs me a lot less to maintain. So
well, the interesting thing about our offer and our program this month is that we worked together and created the wine club for a day experience, with the 6-pack and the 4-pack and the recipe cards, the bottle openers. And so I was just wondering, if you're a wine club member, do you get to sit on it and get your picture taken or something?
We have in the past we have another even older tractor that you'll see with my grandfather on it that's parked in front of the winery. A lot of people do take photos with that tractor, and it's still used to actually do the snow plowing here.
Oh my God.
Built
See?
a 135 Massey Ferguson from 19.
We used it for this harvest.
I actually use it for this harvest. If you go into our website or our Facebook, you'll see me driving on 2 wheels because it's so heavy. I'm actually doing a wheelie around the vineyard with a bin on the back. And my wife thinks I'm crazy, but that tractor is way older than that 1630. But yeah, no, it's I'm a bit of a tractor geek. So
Nice. Speaks a little bit to, what makes you unique and interesting. So keep up the good work. So what are we looking at here, Richard?
this is the view of the Hidden Hollow Vineyard at the winery site. It's called Hidden Hollow because this a pocket at the bottom down there is a geological feature. It was the only it was a kettle lake, an extinct kettle lake. It's a glacial feature from the last ice age, and if there's a few areas. If you look in the distance there on that right there, that is the where our Fumé Blanc, some of our Chenin Blanc is, and Riesling, which is we're actually right now transplanting to more Chenin Blanc. But that's the beach. That's pure quartz sand.
Wow.
One of the only soil deposits of that in this region. The bottom, where you can just see a little bit of down in there is where our facility is going to go when we get enough wine club members and sell enough wine. We're going to be building a new facility down there. The plan is to do the cellar is going to be all underground in that pocket.
Wow. Gravity flow and all, because that's where we're going, how to be efficient. Cool.
Yeah, for sure. And pragmatically, as a farmer, for me, it's the bottom of a frost pocket. So why, may as well put your building in there. That's how they do it in the old country.
Does everybody know what a frost pocket is?
So a frost pocket is a depression, a piece of land. So cold air sinks, and what happens is that during the cold winters, the cold air will sink and settle in this what they call a frost pocket, and usually it makes it a lot more challenging to grow plants in that region. You get a lot more winter damage, and so why would you plant, that and build your building on the hillside when you could put your building in the frost pocket and save the nice piece of land for growing grapes? So that's my pragmatic farmer.
Awesome. Well, smart. Is this Penticton? Is that kind of where we're looking? What are we?
Yeah, so if you look at the water in the distance to the left of the screen, is Skaha Lake.
Yeah, Skaha.
And then where that yellow house is in the middle of the picture, that's where Okanagan Lake is. So Penticton's right.
Okay.
Right there. So we kind of, if you were to go to the very far right of the screen, is exactly where Poplar Grove is, just for context.
Right
yeah.
Okay. Perfect. What a beautiful picture. When I saw it, I was just so inspired. I just could look at this every day. It's just what a view. And of course,
that quartz sand complex there is really important for the Fumé and the Chenin Blanc that we create here. It has been getting us a lot of kind of kudos, and that exists only in that little spot there, and it's pretty cool that's why I'm converting the whole thing to Chenin Blanc. So
okay. Well, one of the things that we talked about was your wines and the work and effort that you're putting in is really to elaborate on a sense of place. These wines are distinctive, and where are they from and why? So we'll continue on with that discussion about, the vineyards. Where are they? Who are they? I mean, these people are having a good time, aren't they?
Well, this is for those of you that are in the meeting today. You may recognize maybe yourself in this photo. This is this last harvest was the first year we actually did a wine club harvest party. In the Chenin Blanc, the whole lot of wine. This is the wine right here. For those that on the back of the label, it says hand harvested 100% by our wine club members. The whole block, the whole allotment of wine was hand harvested by our wine club members. It was such a big hit. We couldn't get people out of the field. That was a big problem for us. People wanted to keep picking, and I was just like, we got to get moving along here, guys. I have usually what we'll do is we'll have a backup crew, my go-to guys sitting kind of floating around the background, just in case somebody decides they don't want to do this anymore, and it still has to get harvested regardless if people want to pick it or not. But we had to drag them out of the field. And
there's not too many places that untrained people get to go and spend time harvesting grapes. It's an experience that I bet is on many people's bucket lists, and many people think they have to go to France, but they actually don't. You know,
so this year we're going to be doing at least 2 harvest days. We're going to put different days.
Yeah,
we had so many people wanting to do it that we had to actually cut it off. And we do Portuguese bufanas, the sandwiches, like the very classic stuff that I would have eaten, my father would have eaten, my grandfather, my aunts and uncles here. By the way, we had 12 aunts and uncles that moved here, and all 4 grandparents. And so this is
so Richard, sorry to interrupt. So the club is closed for this. We have some people wanting to come pick grapes.
Yeah, so this year, so what you do is just send an email or a message to the lovely Twylla, and we'll start putting together a list for 2 or 3 different days this year. So probably do the Chenin Blanc, the Fumé Blanc, and probably the Pinot Blanc. Oh, sorry, the Pinot Noir. Sorry. So yeah, if you were interested in it, it's people love the food. She actually baked a bunch of pastéis de nata.
Do we get to pitch tents and sleep in the vineyard too? Like,
absolutely.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
See, this is a secret.
So if you want to do some, I don't offer glamping. Sorry, this is real farming here. So if you're looking for that experience, not happening here. But
you do have a restaurant, Richard.
You have a restaurant. Very fortunate. We're now the longest running winery chef collaboration in the province.
Wow.
Which is pretty unheard of, actually. The other guys who are right next to us would be Manny and Jeff at Maradero at Tinhorn. So we're very fortunate. We've been consistently doing the Portuguese Spanish tapas and a flair, and we have a rabid following. So we're love Abul. And a funny story that Abul, our chef, he was the first restaurant to carry my wine when he had his own restaurant before he came here. So there you go.
What's his name?
Chef Abul Adame. He's he worked in Vancouver. I believe he worked at Chin Chin's. I think he worked at Ex Biznero, and I don't know if it was Bishop's as well. He worked at several places. He graduated the Vancouver VI, I believe it was. So he's classically, trained.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Yeah, he was brought in initially to the Okanagan by the Wise family to open the restaurant at Boring Owl.
Okay.
That's the neat fact.
Well, we're lucky. You're lucky. It's good.
Yeah, very much so.
So once we harvest the grapes, then the grapes, it looks like, I don't know, what is this? Pinot Noir, Malbec?
We were tossing up that.
It's a little bit big.
See,
It could be Malbec. They're definitely not Pinot Noir.
They're too big, yeah. But it's a close encounter with something from, I don't know, prehistoric times. Tell us about this piece of equipment here. What is this?
This press was, for those that have been in the industry like myself for a very, very long time, would be familiar with what this looks like. This is an old Wilmus press. I believe this is like circa 68, 1970, somewhere in that era. It is all manual. There's no computers or nothing. It's got an on-off button. And it's got a little, we can't see in this shot, it's got a little brake lever, a little hand lever on it to put the brakes on it.
So for people who aren't sure what's happening, do you want to also just kind of say, like, where did the grapes go in? And
yeah, so what happens here is these are sitting on the crush pad. Those who've been to the winery are familiar with the back of the winery here. And what happens is this is kind of a staging area. We'll weigh these bins. And then what we'll do is we'll, to the left, sorry, to the right of this that you don't see in the shot, we have our crusher. So we'll crush this, and in this case, these won't go into that press. Now I know that this is early in the season because there's no red staining on this press yet. So this is the first reds come in. These will then be put into vats to ferment. And we don't press those out until later on after they've had their fermenting process done. So this has got to be really, really early in the season because no reds have touched us yet. That usually after the first or second press, that press is red.
The whole machine is red. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So yeah, they go in there and they get squished. There you go.
But just so everybody is reminded, when we make white wine, usually the grapes are pressed into juice. When we make red wine, we ferment the red grapes first, and then we press. So there is a difference.
Yeah. So I had a few gentlemen there talking about, do we hand harvest? Yeah, absolutely. We're talking. These are extremely small plots of land. We can talk about that a little bit about the wines. I mean, we're talking about 1 acre to 2 acre most lots. So we're talking, when you're talking about Da Silva, we're talking about harvesting grapes from some of the very special sites that are specialized in that grape variety. So they are hand harvested. Sometimes I wish I had the ability to use a harvester sometimes, but it's not even possible. It's just we've never had that opportunity because the land is so small. So yeah,
we're gonna show a map next that's going to show where the different plots, the vineyards are. We're also going to talk a little bit about oak, because oak is kind of that old world influence, new world influence. We have some language that maybe people are familiar with, maybe they're not. But what I was just curious about is, we've got a room full of folks. Does everybody have, like, is there a choice? Was it red today or was it white? Because we can talk about both styles, and we'll just move on. But oak treatment, Richard, is unique, and for a reason, right?
Well, I mean, to be very pragmatic, oak barrels were used in antiquity as a simple vessel to hold a fluid, whether it was oil, like olive oils, whether it was water. A lot of people kind of make this mystical thing. Oak was used because it was abundant in Central Europe. It was very hardy. It was obviously a hardwood. It worked fantastic, and it just, out of just attrition and just trial and error, is like, wow, this actually does something magical to this, this beverage called wine.
Right.
And so, as much as I like to say that that's something in the realm of, no, I mean, this has been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years, and since antiquity, since the Romans and Greeks and probably the Polynesians and Egyptians. So yeah, I mean, the oak is used, and I think the trick is that in antiquity it was used just because it holds something. You wouldn't get rid of those barrels. But when people started with kind of experimenting with toasting and this and that, they just realized that barrels had this magical influence on wine. As with everything that humans do, we tend to sometimes always take things to extremes. And where I think probably cost prohibitively in the old world, especially sustenance farmers, small growers and farmers in France, nobody could afford brand new barrels. It was a luxury. It was expensive to make. And so you didn't have wines that were oak driven. Fast forward to the new world, wow, this is vanilla and spice is magical. Let's do more of it. And then all of a sudden you just have this situation where things just got a little out of control, especially during the 80s and 90s, where wines were completely lost all sense of terroir and place. You're now drinking barrel that happened to have wine taste to it.
Mostly woody.
So Da Silva's thing is to really pare back the propaganda that we're fed, and say, okay, what is the essence here? There's some magical qualities that barrels do to wine. It helps soften tannins with oxidization. It helps to concentrate because you're evaporating water. So there's this concentration, just like a balsamic vinegar. Wine over time, I lose almost 2 liters a month to evaporation. I replace it with wine. So that means over a period of time, the wine becomes more and more concentrated. So those all have benefits. The key is to find balance and harmony, and not reinventing the wheel. Our friends over across the pond, have had hundreds of years of monks figuring it out. I'm going to try to ride those coattails on that. Certainly, we have twist on that for sure, but oak barrels are magical, and I think there's some wines that benefit, some that don't, but it's all about being very taking a very balanced approach to it, and creating wines that I've always loved from the old world: finesse, elegance, the ability to age a long time. And that's my philosophy on oak.
So
We do have somebody asking about the red grapes, the exact fermentation of your red grapes.
So we have a very, very simplistic winemaking philosophy at Da Silva. And this is going to be counter to maybe a lot of people you hear from other wineries. If you look at antiquity, they didn't have a slew of exotic yeast. They didn't have a slew of exotic pieces of equipment. They had a press. If I look at my grandfather's, if you come to the winery, I still have my grandfather's crusher that he made when he landed in Canada to make grapes, and a barrel that he made still at the winery. They would put red, white, didn't matter, all through the same process. And so for me, the thing has been to use that same philosophy. I use in my reds and my whites, they all go through the same setting on my crusher. I don't do whole berry or full cluster or mixed match of any of that. Everything gets treated the same way. Reds go into vats, either open top fermenters, and I use one yeast for all my reds. So whether you're talking about our, the Vino Tinto, right? Or my Nobrezza, our new super premium that we have that just launched, they all go through exactly the same process and the same yeast. So what in essence you're tasting then is the vineyard, the uniqueness of that site, without exotic different things going on. And what's fascinating when you do blind tastings with people, they're blown away. They're just like the complexity and the differences in these wines, even though they all go through the same crusher, the same vats for fermenting. And I use the same setting for my white wines. The white wines you're going to try today, the high aromatic white wines, they go through the same. No, I don't do a whole cluster. I don't do skin. I don't do none of that. They didn't do that in antiquity and some of those great wines from back in the day. And the wines speak for themselves.
So this is a great segue. When you have a consistency in your approach to the grape, the raw material.
Yes.
And you want to share a sense of place, this is where the vineyards then get to speak, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, there's a profound influence in what a winemaker can or cannot do with technology, with different, and I'm not about low intervention. That to me doesn't exist in my vocabulary. Everything we do as a farmer is intervention. That's a news flash for all of you, okay? Whether the wine, the grape that I decide to plant, how I train it, when I harvest it, everything I do is intervention. But there's a point where you don't want to manipulate it. And by doing a whole bunch of exotic, stuff to it, just if you have clean fruit, you have good fruit, and you have clean sanitary winemaking practices, it's fairly simple to make, right?
Good.
That is the key. Keep it simple. And yeah, I mean, it's counter to a lot of people try to make it more than it is. And I think at the end of the day, is my goal at the Silva is to showcase that vineyard as much as possible, and create a sense of place, if that makes sense.
Yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about the vineyards? Because we have quite a few actually. Like there's a map here to orient people, but the next slides are going to be the styles of wine.
Sure.
So, you know, the names on the flags, like flag number 1, what's the name of that vineyard? Is that, or that's at your estate? And is there a name or?
Yeah, so wine, you know, like the numbers on the flags represent a list of the vineyards that we currently have. So now we're up to 13. These are very small sites though, okay? The Da Silva is kind of shows you where approximately we are in the Naramata Bench. And then each of the flags represents a location of where we have our vineyards kind of scattered throughout the Okanagan. And this is done with a lot of purpose. Those that have been to the Okanagan and have been following wine and those who've been farming here for a long time know there's a distinct difference between not just Osoyoos, Penticton, and Kelowna, but there's very distinct differences between regions in Osoyoos, regions within Oliver. There is a kaleidoscope of terroirs and soils due to glaciation in those little regions. And what we're fortunate because of our family connections and being here for so long time is if you had the ultimate palate, if you had the ability to say, where would be the best place, in our opinion, to grow Cab Sauv, Cab Franc, Merlot, Malbec, Syrah, Viognier, and using the kind of the old world's kind of a guidance for me, this is kind of what you'd start to see, because in essence, what you're looking at is pairing some of the best terroirs in the world that makes them the best cuvées in the world and finding regions that are sort of similar in the Okanagan. I'm not trying to be them. I'm very, very, very proudly Okanagan and BC and Canada, but I believe in being efficient and not making a bunch of mistakes to learn something.
Right. Right. I get it. And you know, I think it's a trial and error, life's work. But you know, like I was just noticing, like number 6, very close to the border, super hot climate. Looks like, I don't know, maybe there's elevation there or
So
not.
that-
But then
so-
we've got, go ahead.
Yeah, so that number 6 is a unique site. So right next door to us is the Oculus Vineyard from Mission Hill. And we're talking already one of the best sites for, you know, that bench on the US border is very hot. It has some unique soil composition. This is like where the Viognier, we'll talk about that when we get to it. But yeah, each of these have a very unique reason why we're growing. If you're thinking about Viognier, you're thinking about Southern Rhone, very hot, intense. Viognier and Syrah grow in that region. And this is what we're doing here is going, hey, where would we plant? Even our Muscat, I have, you know, as much as some of us think, I've paid by learning the hard way myself. I remember thinking that Muscat should be growing in the Naramata Bench. I remember drinking some of the great Muscats, you know, Hillside and some other that back in the day would make these wines. But funny enough, if you look at the history of Muscat, Muscat was, you know, grew and evolved in Mesopotamia. It's a desert. It is hot in the Middle East. That is the roots of Muscat.
Okay. You heard that here first, everyone. The roots of Muscat, Mesopotamia, right?
Yeah, the Tigris and Euphrates River.
Yep.
I'm gonna
And,
pop a quick question, sorry, Richard.
Sure.
Just about wild yeast, before we get too far away from the fermentation. So Mark is wondering if wild yeast plays any part or if it goes against the simplicity of the process.
Well, it's interesting about the wild yeast. I think there's, for those of us that have been here in the wine process for decades, I can say this: in the late 80s, it was almost impossible to completely ferment dry. We didn't have a body of wild yeast in our environment. Grapes were not natural to the Okanagan. So it's interesting because if you were to actually plate these yeast that we see today that called so-called wild yeast, those have actually happened because a lot of wineries and some of the big commercial wineries would dump their skins and seeds outside, and the wildlife and the birds and everything else would grab that and deposit that and all over up and down the valley. To the fact now that I actually find it almost difficult to not have my wines instantly combust in the cellar now, because the yeast population native in the Okanagan now is vast.
Wow.
That is an evolution that has happened in the last 30, 40 years. And so, yeah, people can now say, oh, we don't do inoculation. You are able to do that, and you're able to do malolactic today because our forefathers here and our, the previous wineries here use commercial yeast to populate our environment. Otherwise, that would have happened today. And it's really important to understand that. Now, then you would ask them, the question begs, why would I not just continue that? I don't like the risk factor. For me, I don't use exotic yeast. I use completely neutral, what we call complete killers, they call them. They're neutral effect. They're ancient workhorse standard yeast strains that I use because I want to make sure I don't have the luxury to mess up a batch of wine. My wife and I live and die by each of our crops, and I want to make sure that the wine that we have every year is completely fermented dry and no off flavors and crisp. I'm not saying that I couldn't do it. I could probably very well do it now. I have in the back 40 here right now 10 vintages of skins that have birds have been all over it, and it's all over my vineyard, and I could probably do it now, but I just can't afford the risk. I mean, to me, it's like I don't.
This is the business. This is the business of wine.
Yeah, well, we're sustenance farmers, and so
yes.
I'd say a lot of the wineries in the last 10, 15 years in the Okanagan are vanity projects. We don't have that luxury. My growers depend on me to create a tasty wine that you will turn around and
And
so
go to market. Yeah.
I'm not against it, but wild yeasts are a bit of a misnomer because there were no wild yeast in the Okanagan because you grow that here. It was a desert. You couldn't grow anything here.
Well, I think I would also say I've heard winemakers say there's no such thing as wild yeast, which is what you're saying. It's not wild, it's what has happened. So natural,
to be fair, I think there's probably mutations that happen and they probably would have their own unique characteristics to the wine for sure. But in my malolactic fermentation, I have an inoculated malolactic in my cellar now for my reds since probably 2009.
Does everybody know what malolactic fermentation is?
It's a secondary fermentation for reds that converts what we call malic acid, which is what makes apples, like green apples, that green tart taste we taste, into lactic that gives it kind of a creaminess to wines. And actually to this day, I know a lot of wineries still inoculate. I have no problem completely mellowing my wine to dryness every year. Even in my best attempts to not have a wine go through a malolactic for my reds, they just happen. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely don't like painting it as it's better than or worse than. I think that's a bit disingenuous from a lot of people in the industry. It's a personal choice that I have. That I want to make sure the wine I have is clean, is tasty, is not highly manipulated. And this is something that I tell people. There's a bit of a dialogue that's a bit a false dichotomy that's used that says, well, if you're not that, then what they're inferring is that then you're a pharmaceutical company. If you're not a zero natural wine guy, you're some kind of petrochemical company. And that is so disingenuous because it's not the case. We just, in my case, we use very basic ancient tools to make wine, and we guide that process. And I don't just put it in a vat and let things happen. That's not what I do.
That's your job as the winemaker, but I think it's a great insight for people who don't know. Winemakers have to know, good winemakers have to know absolutely every part of the process so that they can know when to interact or to, and so thank you for saying all of the above, because I think it clarifies certainly what things you're thinking about as your wine is going from grape or from the vineyard right to the winery into the bottle.
Yeah, and I think, as time goes on, we'll have probably the ability in the next, who knows, in the next generation, there'll be enough of that biome in the environment here that you can do wines completely 100% natural without having to do adding yeast to it. But
yeah. Can I just say, like, if people haven't tried this one yet, Fantastico, yes, and the Bronco I haven't tried, but like when I was in Lisbon, I saw these tiles everywhere, and then when I saw this bottle, I was like, oh my goodness, this is Portugal. So how lucky are we to have this expression in the Okanagan Valley? Like, I think it's fantastic and a differentiator for sure, like completely memorable, Richard.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's I grew up with a lot of that around in our family homes out here in the Okanagan. People, were that was the blue and white is a very favorite Portuguese color choice for sure. And those tiles, everyone from Portugal tried to have some of those tiles in their kitchen or their washroom or somewhere. So it was they're very famous in Portugal and all over Portugal, whether most of the places that where my family grew up or they were raised, they would use these in the corner of their buildings as a sign that have the little border with the number of their house in the middle. So you'd have these as street signs or as a house marker with these little tiles on every home. So it's those of them in Portugal are very familiar with that.
Very distinctive. And Vino Bronco, I mean, you're in Canada, you're in the Okanagan, we are English and French, and now you've got a Portuguese label. What are you thinking?
I'll one of the homages I have here is the untold story of the Okanagan. This region was built on the back of the Portuguese immigrant labor force. Portuguese were pivotal, an important part of building the industry we know today, and it's being lost because Portuguese have a habit of just doing. That's what Portuguese do. They put their heads down and do it, and don't talk about it, and it's just part of their personality. But that history of how important we were as the labor force to build the back of the Okanagan wine industry is slowly disappearing today. There were literally my 12 aunts and uncles and Oliver, 80%, 75% of the people there were Portuguese. People don't even know that at one time. It was very, very strong community there, and they were involved with all sorts of the agricultural parts of the Okanagan, especially the South Okanagan anyway. So this is a bit of an homage to that. The traditional series is a knockback to a very antique way of making wine by blending. So these wines are not blended, they're actually co-fermented. So what happens is we put these into a vat and we continuously feed the different grape varieties into the tank during harvest. So they're all fermented together. They're not blended after the fact. They're not fermented separately. And these will typically come from 1 or 2 vineyards. And the reason for this in Portugal, for example, you'd have a vineyard with 100 varieties or more. Farmers, you didn't ask farmers what they had in it. Nobody had a clue. And what they would do though is they would just harvest it when they think everything was about ready for harvesting. They would harvest them all together, and regardless of which variety was there, you would create consistency over years because some varieties would do better than others in one year. And conversely, the next year, another variety might be due while the other one doesn't do as well. But by blending it, it was kind of an ancient way of creating consistency from a vineyard. So field blends is where this has been kind of, what would I say, inspired by, is what this is. So all the wines in traditional series are based on that traditional way of making wine in Portugal.
So I think quite a few, well, not quite a few people in the room have this. I have this one. Now, what I would say is mine is a screw top. So maybe this picture.
Yes, well, we're waiting for new photos to get done. So they are all
That's okay. No, I like screw top. I think it's smart. I think it's efficient. I can put the screw back on, put it in the fridge, and have some more tomorrow.
Yeah, I think in these wines, the structure lends well to this particular closure type for me. We can go to, I did experiment with some of my other wines in screw cap, but over a body of work and time, the wine didn't translate under screw cap. But in this particular style, because of, for whatever reason, it seems to work quite well. And I've been very, very happy with the results. The wine is, most people are like, wow, it's got crazy aromatics. The Pearl of Caba.
Yes. The color, look at that. The color is fantastic. Beautiful aromas, easy drinking. Like, this is such a lovely, I just need a little bit of ham and cheese and olive, and I would be. For sure,
like some of that, the cheeses from the Azores and some of that, like a lot of this we would eat like rabbit or goat meat, for example, and stuff like that, for sure, growing up. But what it doesn't have on here is that there is a smattering of Touriga Nacional in this vintage. And the consecutive vintages now will have the two Portuguese varieties in.
Where's that coming from? You have Touriga Nacional planted somewhere in the Okanagan Valley?
So yeah, we have Touriga Nacional. We have the only planting of Alicante Bouchette in Canada. It's also a traditional plant variety grown in the Dow region of Portugal. And we have Touriga Franca, which I believe we're also the only winery in Canada to do. And we actually do our port. We have about 3 or 4 vintages of port laying down that won't be released for another several years. By then, we'll have one of the largest port collections in North America, based on 100% Portuguese varieties. We'll be the only winery that I know of in North America to actually do that. A lot of people ask me, where's your port wine? And we're like, well, we're not going to do port. My grandfather will be rolling around his grave if I'm making it out of Merlot. That's not going to happen.
So the thing about Portuguese wine is there is a huge shift from sweet to dry. So we never want to go back and create sweet wine, I mean, in large quantities. But what I would say is Touriga Nacional is one of the great varieties, I think, was approved for Bordeaux. So this is a style that likes heat. And I mean, this is the Cabernet Sauvignon of Portugal. So this is very exciting.
Yeah, so interesting fact about, like, even in a challenging year like this year, it is the one grape variety that I had no experience with. This was very new for me in the Okanagan. I have one other counterpart of mine that grows Touriga Nacional, and it was really interesting situation. It'll go to like 29 bricks for those of you that translates to like crazy alcohol level in it, and yet though it naturally retains acidity, and I can see why port is based on it, because it gives that acidity, the alcohol for it, all naturally in that wine, and the extraction from the very small berries. It's a magical grape for port, and there's a reason why they use it for that. So it's nobody.
That's exceptional.
Yeah, it's the port though, for me, the challenge is going to be, I don't know if I'm going to make port for me or for or for the next generation coming. It's a long. The thing about port is time. It's really the magic of it. And certainly, we'll be able to carry that legacy on. We will be releasing the port, a young port, a very small batch of that, in 2 years, I believe, will be the first release of that.
Wow. So will it be like a late bottled vintage then, like 7 years of age or something?
Yeah, it'll be younger than that, I think. And I am working with a couple of producers from Portugal, trying to twist Mr. Cristiano von Zeller's arm to give me some direction here too, from Quinta Dona Maria in Portugal. I've made some great friends from the Portuguese port industry. I mean, Cristiano von Zeller's family was probably pivotal in resurrecting the Portuguese port industry.
I would love to know from people in the room, how many people like port? How many people know about port? How many people would be interested? Yeah, so port is a great dessert wine, blue cheese all the way with walnuts, and you know, like sitting by a fire, and like this is a great thing. But it's not part of our culture, so it's, you know, it's part of the learning, I think, that's going to go on. So
yeah, it's unfortunately, it was kind of, you know, people thought, well, we'll just put sugar and alcohol and make a sweet red wine,
well,
which is
the cheaters. Yeah, the cheaters. Yeah.
And there's so many poor examples of that out there. It's painful. Yeah. But that's why I've been,
Richard. We're waiting for yours. That's truth.
So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah. Okay. So quick question. We're going to slide on to the next one, which is going to show all the vineyards. But I noticed here the vineyards are quite similar for the Tinto as they are for the Blanco. So when we flip over to the next slide, you want to point out Outwash, Cabana, Blenheim, and Vila.
So yeah, these are going to be a little bit of a hodgepodge. So the Perla Chava is coming from number 7, OK Falls. It's a cross of I believe with Muscat, I believe it is. I'm trying to remember.
It's a New York, isn't it a New York Muscat or a black Muscat, something like that?
It was
Hungarian in its origin.
Yes, and
planted,
there was
planted also at Sperling.
Yep.
And I think it's going to get ripped out because like nobody's drinking these Moscatos. It's a Moscato, right? Or a Muscat.
Yeah, it's a cross. But it's one of those grape varieties that on its own would be too powerful. It would be just really overbearing. Yeah, but it's quite magical in a blend like this, because it just adds this amazing bouquet to the wine that makes it, you know, very super cool to kind of try. But so yeah, it's I kind of follow the valley from Osoyoos number 6. The Muscat and the Pinot Gris, and then we kind of follow up, and as we harvest them, as we go north, we just keep adding it to the vat.
Okay.
And
so where's Avila? Is Avila down here?
Number 5.
Number 5 is Avila.
That's my cousin's property, George Avila.
Okay, and then we had the Outback.
Outwash. 4.
Number 4. Where's number 4?
Down by there.
Outwash. Okay.
So yeah, that flag should be right by Oliver. But anyway, it's another a kettle lake in right by the Oliver Airport where the Twylla National grows. It's a furnace.
Oh, a furnace. Well, I've been in Oliver at 38 degrees and my air conditioning's not working. It was a furnace. That's all I remember. It was a furnace. So let us talk about the how do you say this? Vinhedo series?
Vinhedo, which translates in Portuguese to vineyard series. So those of you familiar with our Baby Blue label, these are our vineyard focused wines. They're all about vineyard. They're all about place. This wine is a homage to my grandmother. Her name was Isabella. If you go to my Facebook, there's some photos of me. Both of my parents were very ill at one time when I was very young. They're both still alive, my parents, thankfully, but I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, my grandfather, and some amazing memories, very, very, very close to her. Her name was Isabella, and this wine is an homage to her. Her and my grandfather were also some of the first Portuguese to smuggle grapevines from Portugal in their luggage from Portugal.
I like it.
They're no longer here, so they can't be put in jail. So there you go.
Yeah, listen, they weren't the only ones. They
Nope.
weren't the only ones. And that's how vines got around the world, not on suitcases. I mean, that's very modern, but ships, everybody had their collection and off they go. So.
And that vineyard is
like
still
this
growing
episode.
wild on a small little hillside below Tin Horn. There's the old
So we have to make a trip there because I do want to take pictures of that and see those grapes. And I mean, that is a true field blend. That will be a true field blend there.
Yeah, so the Isabella is, so this is about vineyards. So this is coming from the Hidden Hollow Vineyard. So the photo that you showed initially at the winery.
Yeah.
Oh,
at the winery. Okay.
Yes.
Like here.
Yeah, so that vineyard that just above your mouse there.
Yeah.
Nope, that's Pinot Noir right there where you had it. And then if there's a little corner of a vineyard there that you can, right there, that's the Muscat. That's all we have. We have basically 0.3 of an acre of Muscat and 1 acre of Riesling. That is where that comes from.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
So very small. We make a couple hundred cases of that wine. It's very dry.
And will you just tell people the difference between Frizzante and traditional method?
Yeah, so this is a bit of a hybrid. I've fooled a lot of people this wine because typically Frizzante is usually indicative of a cheaper style of forced CO2. So people will force the wine either in the line into the bottle, and versus traditional where you do the fermentation, you capture it in a vessel or in the bottle. This is a hybrid. What I've done with this, I came up with my own particular way of doing that, where I actually do force the carb in it, but I leave it in the tank for 2 months. This wine is done, and it's done on the lees. And so
like Charmant method, maybe.
Exactly, like a lot of people who have opened this wine and tasted, they think it's done they think it's a traditional method because the mousse is very elegant in it. And the wine is, because a lot of times, a lot of less expensive Frizzantes have big poppy bubbles. This has got a mousse and an elegance to it that I have fooled a lot of people with this wine. So we were actually getting rid of the word Frizzante on it.
Isabella, what would be the method? Charmant then, maybe?
Well, we don't have to actually say it on the bottle.
Okay.
So we're.
Lower in alcohol. Riesling and Muscat, so aromatic. If anybody hasn't tried it, quite lovely. I call this a brunch wine. I would.
Very dry, just a hint of fruit to it, but
nice aromatics on the nose. I liked it very much. It was delicious. This also has limited cases. Like you've only got 173 cases of this. Like
that's the story of our wines. Those that know the Silva brand. A lot of these are really, really, really small lots of wine. I think the biggest production we do, which is to a couple of lots of our friends in the Okanagan that do small wines, our big producers, the Tinto and the Bronco, are 500 cases. So
405. Not very much still though. Yeah.
So it's very, very tiny. So we'll do the Viognier next. So this comes from down Osoyoos, down on the U.S. border. Really, really hot. We have 1 acre. That's it.
1 acre.
Yeah,
1 acre.
That's going to be a common theme with Da Silva. 1 acre lots. So
yeah. Okay, wine club members, we need to get another acre.
Can't afford another acre in the Okanagan. That's the problem, though.
Let's not talk about that. Yeah.
I mean, it's always, it's important. I think that for people, it's we're sitting in a. For those of us that some of you that are not in BC or maybe aren't up to it, we are farming in some of the most expensive farmland in the world. We're talking now, I've heard of acreages going for over $450,000 for an acre of things. So it is, there was one unicorn that went for 700,000. To give you context, I believe it was Dom Perignon bought 10 acres for $10 million in France. So now we're rivaling some of the top vineyard sites in the planet. So this does create a bit of a dilemma for us, but we're very unique to work with families that have been farming here for a very long time that are committed to continue to farm. And I am very blessed, because without that ability, it would be extremely difficult. So this is a nod off to our farmers and growers out there. They are what make the magic happen. I'm here as a conduit for their story. I have an affinity to farming. I tell everybody that my family has been farming here for decades. It's very challenging.
Years.
You know, I always tell a story that, you know, most of my family, you know, died poor and broken here. And that's the story of farming in the Okanagan. A lot of people forget that. We see a lot of shine and lots of, but it's challenging. If you're a true farmer and it's your only livelihood, this is where
your wines are going to double in price.
Well, I mean, I hope not. I mean, it's, you know, I've always, it's an interesting fact. Those of you who travel overseas, I always ask people, why can you get a great wine in France or in Spain for 10 euros? I said, yes, you can actually do that. But every time I've made this challenge to somebody, go to the store, any store, and ask them for a single vineyard variety wine from a small producer that makes 200 cases. You will automatically, inevitably, always get walked to the glass case somewhere, because the reality of farming this small with these small, like an acre or two, it's expensive, and it's very challenging. So
Richard, you know, Condrieu, Northern Rhone, Viognier, famous. To buy a bottle in here when I worked in retail was $80 for the basic Viognier Condrieu on the label, $80. So, you know, we're far away from that number. So
I think I think for the Okanagan, I think we're at the beginning of the golden age. I think until now, it was a lot of kind of trying to figure out our stuff.
Yep.
But you know, I think those are the people, we know everything. Bullshit. We don't know anything yet. We're learning that now. And I am learning every vintage myself, even though I'm on the back of almost 70 years of farming here. We are still learning our craft, and the Okanagan has a ways to go. But I will say this, we as consumers and as farmers and wineries are at the golden age of the Okanagan, because now a lot of those very challenging wines that are being made here have dropped. And so as a consumer, there's some amazing choices out there now, and some great stories. I think there's some, you know, for me, you know, from my first experience doing wine in BC to where we are today, I won't say what winery it was, but I remember drinking a Cab Franc in 1990 from a winery here. That it took me almost 10 years to drink Cab Franc again. It was like that really bad tequila experience in university.
Yeah.
And, I was like, "Ee." So, you're playing with them. My wife's like, decided, let's rile the dogs up.
Well, you know, on that note, we're going to get a little bit riled because there is a question, and I'm just going to throw it out there, and we can maybe talk about it later. So you decide, but it has to do with the upcoming tax shift. Does that impact you, Richard, or does it just impact retail?
Well, I think it impacts everyone. I think myself included. Anything that affects the consumer affects me. I think that's ultimately how that works. We got a little bit of a reprieve in this budget for that, but I think I mean, I don't know. I've given up trying to figure out what's going on with the whole taxing system in Canada and BC for wine.
Yeah,
but it does impact us. Any when you look at the price of markup and taxes that go into a bottle of wine, you have to just kind of like shake your head a little bit. But
yeah.
it's yeah, I am kind of glad that there was a bit of a reprieve. I think consumers are being asked to carry a lot of load right now. I'm being asked to carry a lot of load. I mean, give you an analogy, like just my cost for glass, to those that just it's kind of one of those kind of things nobody even thinks about, a bottle of glass, but it just went through the roof. And I mean, so for me, there's a cause and effect. So yeah, I'm conscious of my consumer. Anything that affects the consumer with taxing or price increases or gouging that we're getting from shipping companies. For those of the wine club members, we're trying to address it. We've made some arrangements to start trying to find some savings for shipping, for example. But a lot of people don't realize that shipping, there's a slow amalgamation happening. There's really 3 or 4 big guys that basically own the whole industry, and they're slowly putting the news to everybody on that. And it's very challenging for us to try to make that economical. And yeah, we've seen affect consumers going like, well, we'd love to buy your wine, but we can't afford to pay $50, $80 to ship it to Ontario.
Yeah.
But
well, we can't ship it to Ontario anyway, can we?
I'll ship it anywhere. I don't care. That's on the record. I'm like,
let's not
bring
go
it
there.
on. I told this to Terry David Mulligan one day. I said, I will die on that hill. Bring it. But it's ridiculous. There is another good thing I heard now that they're looking at breaking down trade barriers. Let's see if that goes anywhere. That was one of the things that happened from this last budget. Let's please write into your government, break that down. I mean, it is ludicrous that as a farmer in the Okanagan, I can't sell my product to a fellow Canadian anywhere in this country.
Yeah,
that is absolutely insane. And I think that the people should be
up in arms. Yeah.
But anyway, I digress.
I digress too. So let's talk about wine.
Let's talk about wine. So
was there anything you wanted to add to the Viognier story? The vineyards we looked at, number 6 down at the very, there's a vineyard down there owned by Lariana, the people at Lariana Cellars, and they're doing a Viognier too. Lots of
they're actually, if I had my potato gun loaded, I could shoot it from the side of the road and hit their house from where we are. So
good.
They're on the opposite side of the lake.
Okay. Oh, so you get evening sun and they get morning sun.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's quite flat in the 2 areas we are. So
yeah.
It's marginal. It wouldn't be like, say, if you're on the Golden Mile and on the Black Sage, it's not as drastic, but yeah, for sure. So yeah, and the Viognier moving forward will now have a bit of oak to it. We're doing a little bit of oak contact. It's very subtle, but it's a great wine. It's kind of one of those wines that you can have with a lot of food. It's something that it's not a lot of people do it. It can sometimes be a little off-putting to some people because sometimes it can be a bit almost oily a little bit.
Surprising because unexpected texture usually, right? And you said oily. That's kind of isn't that a classic signature of a little bit of oiliness in the Viognier?
So here's the thing about one of the benefits we have as a family that's been farming here forever is we've been able to grow this in a lot of different places. And it was interesting that I had, Viognier on the Naramata Bench versus Viognier in Osoyoos. I had, in my opinion, a better structure and acidity in Osoyoos with a lot more crop, which from a farming perspective is perfect, versus in the bench. Yeah. And I had to really
pay attention. Yeah.
Pay attention on the bench. I don't have to do anything in Osoyoos. It just grows like a weed and is amazing. Yeah. Of course, we attended, but it was it had more, it was just more interesting for me. And I had 2 or 3 sites in Naramata we were growing it on. It was all sorts of mental gymnastics to try to make it work the way I wanted to.
Yeah.
Whereas in Suias, we just planted it and boom.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you know, here's what I will say. Single vineyard, you get double points for that. Viognier, not easy to grow, not easy to make, appealing. So double points for that. So at $30 a bottle, I think it's probably worth twice the amount. But there you go. We'll move along.
Yeah, that's it. Pinot Noir. Those that have followed us, this has been a signature wine for us. It is can you get too hot for growing there? Yeah, Viognier likes heat. So that's why it kind of works down there. It's used to that heat. If you look in the Rhone region, it's really, really, really hot. So yeah, it grows fantastic there. This is the thing about knowing where to farm in the Okanagan. So in the years that we've had these crazy kind of variances in weather and all this other kind of stuff, when you have the right vineyards planted in the right location, your year-to-year extremes in your vineyard are a lot less because the vines are planted in the right places, right? Or, you know, I'll preface it with my opinion, planted in the right places. And so I don't get crazy oscillations vintage to vintage based on what's going on outside because we've spent, you know, a lifetime trying to figure out where these places, these vines should be planted. We don't have that extreme oscillation in the wines. They just grow well. How we mitigate that is by maybe adjusting the crop level year to year to kind of canopy and crop level, but year after year, these wines, and I have a track record now, this particular vineyard going back to 2010 or 9, it's a long time. So there's a body of work there showing here, like, don't take my word for it.
Yeah.
Here's a, you know, over a decade and a, you know, yeah, way over a decade from this one vineyard producing this wine of this caliber. So,
Yeah.
Pinot Noir though is so the motivation for this kind of wine is that so again, going back to those that were paying attention earlier, red wine, what do? I do the same process with my Pinot Noir that I do with my Syrah and Malbec.
Okay.
That's mind-blowing to a lot of people.
Yes.
I hear a lot of people talking about the Pinot Noir as the heartbreak grape variety.
Yep.
Bullshit. We're in the Okanagan. We're a desert, okay? We get very little disease pressure here. If you plant this in the right location, this is not Burgundy, this is not Willamette. We don't have the issues that our friends do in those areas. And so the issue is that it's dry. We got lots of airflow because we're in these small valleys. You plant this in the right place, it's bulletproof. In fact, if you go to the very beginning photo of my winery site, the Hidden Hollow, that vineyard at the edge of that frost pocket, oh, right there in the forefront there,
Here.
that is all Pinot Noir. And what's going on in the left-hand side in the other chunk of that cold piece of land is all Pinot Noir. Now, why would I do that if it's the heartbreak grape variety? That grape variety, even this year with the cold snap, is bulletproof, okay? I have no problem growing that almost anywhere. And so, and that makes sense to a degree. If you look at Burgundy, it's really, really cold. It can be really, really, you know, it's got that continental effect there.
That frost pocket thing.
Right? So by me doing the wine in that style, I don't do the whole cluster. I don't do yada, 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 yada. I just crush it and ferment it. And what you get from it is a wine that's fairly deep. Like it's a wine that's, if you're looking for a classic, super, you know,
Elegant, finessed.
that is not what I'm doing with this wine. This wine is definitely going to be on a little bit more of the fuller side.
Okay.
What is like
Drink now? Do we drink it now or do we age it?
absolutely. No, that wine is so this 2020, I would say, do we have that open right now? Yeah, let's try that. This is gonna be, I haven't tried this wine
Oh, yay.
myself, so let's see what happens here.
All right, let's have what's my wine tasting going on.
Yeah. So the thing is that Pinot Noir grows really, really well in certain areas. Now, this doesn't happen if you're down in Osoyoos and Oliver. It's too hot. There's a sweet zone. OK Falls, Naramata. Some of the benches now in Kelowna are creating some great wines. Now, when you get into our legato wines, we'll talk about that at the end of the show. That's where you find wines that are more ephemeral, the more those elegant old world style of Pinot Noirs, for example. But this wine is a Pinot Noir that I enjoy. I don't like big, huge, chunky wines. I like a wine that can go with almost any dish, any food that I'm eating, and this wine fits the bill. And in fact, this is one of our #1 selling SKUs for a reason. Specifically,
we've got people in the room sipping Pinot Noir at the moment. So, you know,
I've never seen him. Oh, being a smart ass over there, Mr. Greg there. But yes, I don't add mushrooms to my wine, big guy. Yeah, no, it's so damp earth mushroom. It's for those of you that understand. A lot of these earthy complexities that you're getting actually come from older barrels. So as barrels start to, a barrel is an organic vessel, and as it slowly begins to decay is the wrong word, as it starts to age and starts to break down,
age out.
It's that forest floor, the earthiness, that all that stuff. That is what the forest is all of that kind of organic material from trees, leaves, sticks. That is what's happening with the barrel, and a lot of that you're tasting and you're sensing in that wine, because I have barrels here in my cellar that are easily 25 years old, 20 to 25 years old, that we still use today. Why? Because we keep them really, really clean. And they also impart these interesting kind of characteristics to wine. And yeah, I mean, this wine is, like restaurants like up at Whistler, Red Door, and Araxi, and I believe guys like Rimrock. These wines have been like a cult following up there. Some of the wine club members that are probably here today probably were introduced this wine through those restaurants. They were just like, I have never tasted something like that. And to me I didn't want to make an overthought up Pinot Noir. I just wanted something that was really expressed my region, and this is it. So I don't know if you have that there, guys, but cheers to that. I have it here. So you're watching me taste. This is the first time.
All right, Richard, you do it. Come on, do it.
Since I bottled it, so.
Note is
Just
careful.
kidding. Fantastic. No, this is wow, that's got some aging to do too. Great tannin structure to that. That's wow. There you go. So yeah, the wine is one of the things I try not to do is I always with my own wines is I always try to leave them, and I try not to drink my own wines often, because you lose perspective. It's one of the things that you give up as a winemaker when you're trying to make wine of this caliber, is you need to always try to be as objective and subjective as possible. And I always try wines that my wine club members, my counterparts and sommeliers recommend. So when I drink my own wines, like in this setting, I'm like, excellent, it's on point. Yeah. And that wine is on point. And that wine has easily several more years. I mean, I think that's got, is anybody in the room drinking that right now?
I have a few people.
Interesting. That's
so does everybody so two things come to mind. One is a Paulie. And a pali is when you gather, everybody brings wine, and you share your wine with people in the room. And the second thing is, Pinot Noir is one of the more revered wines in the world. So I can imagine a very fun night at Da Silva Winery with a pali going on in outside in the vineyard with tables where people bring their Pinot Noir. Everybody brings a bottle, not yours. And we share this experience because, to your point, I think it's a very informed and educated person that would say, I can get drunk on my own Kool-Aid.
So I'm going to interject here, because here is something that my wife and I have been working on for the last couple of years.
Okay.
Obviously, a couple of years we could do it, but we've been putting together a plan for our wine club members to do a in the vineyard dinner that the wine grows in. So, for example, this is the Blenheim Hill and the Lazy Dog Vineyard. The Blenheim Hill, amazing story. We'll be able to tell that later on. And
where is it on the map here?
It's the number one.
Number one
site. And so what we want to do is actually bring either a producer that makes Pinot Noir either from the old world, somewhere away from, not from here, and do a side-by-side dinner where we actually show our Pinot Noir in our terroir and their Pinot Noir with a pairing, a dinner paired around the foods. No one in the Okanagan has had the gumption to do that yet. It's all about their own wines. I have all the faith in the world that my wines will compete against any of the top cuvées around the world. I'm always like, bring it. And so for me, what's fascinating is to actually show context. Here's this wine. Here's the vineyard it's grown in. Give it context, and then bring another wine from someone that I also respect around the world and create a dinner around that. And I think that's next level.
So next level, because when you think about everyone is growing everyone. All the wine regions of the world are now growing Pinot Noir. New Zealand, Chile,
amazing Pinot Noirs.
South Africa. Yeah, so it could be a very international, global, So anyway, we're going to talk about that after.
Yeah,
I'm in for it for sure.
Yeah, no, I think it's amazing. Once you put the wine in a brown bag and you get the label out of it,
Yes, sir.
goes out of the room, it's amazing.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Talking my language.
Just a little thing. So this wine, the Nobriz that you see here in my hand.
No, what is that?
We'll talk about that a little later on. So this Nobriz, it's a Bordeaux blend. We did a brown bag tasting with several people that are in the industry, quite well known, against a couple of really cult following wines from California, brown bagged, and this wine was picked as their top red on every occasion. And the cult wines were up there in cost. And so for those of you that think that BC can't make those kind of wines, I say, come on over, we'll brown bag your favorite wine. Let's do it. And I'll pay for my bottle if you think you can do that, because
look at what he's got. Look at what he's got. All right. So we've got a bottle of exactly what you have there, Richard, in the room. And they're very happy. They've got big smiles on their face. I just was wondering when they would be delivering my dinner.
Yeah. Me too. Syrah Malbec. This is something that's quite unique to us. I think we were one of the first guys to do a Syrah Malbec in the Okanagan.
Okay.
I think there's another one or two producers doing it now, though, I think. But what I like about it is you have the meat, the roasted meat flavors, the pepper, the spice, and the Syrah blended with the Malbec, that kind of blueberry compote, that kind of juicy berry notes you get from the Malbec, and quite soft. And the wine is full, it's intense, and it's very reflective of where it grows. We don't have that on here. This comes from two sites. Both of these sites. So
There. Which ones?
so the Malbec grows right. It's 1 acre. The regular theme here, right beside the Viognier. They're both
Down
side.
here. Okay, down by number 6.
So it's really hot. And then number 9, which is right across from where I grew up as a child, as a kid, growing up in school, on the Tessalinda Creek bench there, up against the near where Rustico Winery is. That some of the people may know where that region is in Oliver there. Right next door to that, it's called the Sunrise Vineyard. Like with everything in the Okanagan, connection to my family, my dad had built the family home that's on that property. And really hot, solid rock. Like it's all like small. If I were to take a picture of the soil there, you'd think you're in the Rhone Valley, because it's like just all rock. It's just ridiculous.
Pudding, they call them galet pudding stones. You know, is that what you mean? The big round.
Yeah. As a kid, not so fun, because we had to pull those away because you couldn't cut the grass there with those rocks there. You just hamburger your mower on your farm. So anyway.
What I liked about this wine also was this lovely acidity. Like, acidity makes all the difference with the wine pairings and the food choices. And this wine just delivered on that note. All the flavor, all the character, but then this like nice acidity. It wasn't like jammy and, you know, it's not a cocktail wine. This is a food wine for me. But
no, I'll say to those people who know my wines, a lot of all my reds will have a spine of acidity to them. That's something that's a hallmark for my wines.
Yeah, for sure.
Very conscious. Growing up as in a Portuguese household, you never drank wine on its own. You drank it with food.
100%.
So acidity was really important for that pairing, and so yeah, that's.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that. I think sometimes people don't understand that wine as a cocktail is a different character, a monster, than wine with food. Totally different. Totally different.
Yeah, no. For me, it's of course, I want people to drink wine all the time.
Yeah.
But I growing up, for me though, it was unheard of. It was whether it was a dry white or a dry red, it didn't matter. Didn't matter if it was with red or white meat. Nobody. It was a glass of wine with your food, and so typically it was a full-bodied white or a full-bodied red.
Yeah.
Dry. That's what we did.
Yeah.
So
we're just gonna come to the end here. I'm sure there's lots of questions to continue. The offer that we've made together includes 2 winery exclusives, which was the Syrah Malbec and the Viognier. Yep. And there's a 6-bottle offer and a 4-bottle offer up. Please, please, please. I don't think we've sold a dozen cases. We'd love to sell another dozen. So if anyone liked the wines and enjoyed the wines tonight and the conversation, please go online and place your order. Also,
Twylla here is the one who.
Call Twylla.
Yeah, don't talk to me. That'll get lost. But Twylla packs all these by hand for you. This is really one of the few wineries that you guys will be on where the owners, my wife is, and those of you that have been here, like, Greg, we're here every day. We're intrinsically involved with everything. So your wine clubs are actually physically hand packed by Twylla and Kate and Paul. So yeah, it's something where it's a personal touch from the owners. There's our 2 dogs, and there's a little Skippy right over here. Come here, boy. Come on. So we have our guys here with us. So our dogs are part of the whole shaboozle. Yeah, this picture's taken at our Blenheim Hill Vineyard, where we live, and that's where our Fumé Blanc comes from. So
I just want to ask, will this be where the dinner in the vineyard and the Paulie will be? Is this it?
Yeah, so we have actually a pergola that grows over top.
Of course you do.
Portuguese, come on. And so it goes through the whole length of the vineyard, the pergola. It's it's got a flat spot do a big long farm table right in the middle of the vineyard. It's got a great history. This vineyard was this block you guys are seeing right now. Interesting story. So when my wife and I first started, I started with a vineyard management company. We helped plant this block. We didn't have a winery yet. The gentleman and his wife, Ben Amos, had bought this property from the former mayor of Penticton at one time. And it had been a lot of history. And my wife and I were just starting out. And I remember her and I planting this block of Sauv Blanc going, wouldn't it be interesting if, we could own this? And there was like, no way, there's not going to happen. A couple of years later, he approached us to help to lease the property, to manage it and lease it. And we're like, yeah, this would be fantastic, great story. And we plugged away for years and years. And then unfortunately, his wife passed away. And Ben was on this property for a couple of years. Ben Amos, shout out to Ben and his family. He approached us and said, look, he said, I would love you guys to buy this from me. And we were like, this is this is, by the way, vineyard number 1 on Naramata Road. Okay. Number 510 Naramata Road is the very first vineyard on the Naramata Road. And we were like, so he helped us carry the mortgage to get it going to start with, so that we could purchase this place. So we have mad respect for him. This property has a very deep connection to us. It's a 5-acre property. We owe a lot to Ben and that vision. He still comes by here and busts my chops on a current basis. We have an interesting relationship. That's his job, to come in here and be antagonist to me all the time. But he's a very good friend and a mentor. So that's the story of this place. And that's the thing you'll find with Da Silva, is there's a connection to all these places. When you've been farming here that long, there's such an ephemeral connection to every piece of dirt that we're talking about here. There's a story, there's family history, there's happy times, there's sad times. There's a lot of people don't, we tend to whitewash things in wineries, but we're very lucky. So cheers to that, to Ben and Amos, and to all of our members out there. Cheers, guys. Thanks a lot. And ask me any questions. I'm sure my wife will kick me under the table here if I get out of line, but.
Well, I just want to say, Richard, thank you very much for a great presentation, for all of your stories and the information that you provided. I think not only are people learning about wine and winemaking and winery ownership, but they're also learning about the whys and the deep connection to farming and the values of family and heritage that you have. So it's an inspiration to all of us. And just want to say, really want to say thank you. I'm going to stop the recording now. And thank you.